Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mob Impressions. Today we're going to be talking about Monster Harvest. I'll give you a summary of the game. We'll talk about the gameplay, the presentation, the pros and cons, and then my final verdict on if I recommend it or not. The game comes out August 31st, 2021. It's going to be on Steam for $20. However, I played the Switch version. I want to thank the devs and publishers for the review copy, Maple Powdered Games, and Merge Games. However, all thoughts will be my own. So, let's get started. That is the story. Well, it's kind of very similar to the start of a Stardew Valley or some of the Harvest Moons, where you as a child loved playing on your uncle or grandfather's farm, and it's now time for you to inherit it for one reason or another. So you leave your city life and you come over here, and this is a fairly newly built town, by the way. And the reason so is because people are drawn to the experiments done by Professor Spark, which is the creation of Planimals. So the big draw of this game is that, hey, there are monsters that you're going to be harvesting, and they all do different things. They can help you in combats, they can help you, make money, you can also grow and tend to the farm. So that's pretty much the story. You are in this new town. It's slowly building up, but then some people move in who maybe want to take control of the slime, and then some things get out of hand, and it's up to you to figure out what the heck's going on there. So the genre of the game, as you can probably tell, it's a farming simulator, creature collecting, RPG, agriculture, turn-based combats, a lot of those. So if that sounds interesting, well, well, it's all there. The target audience is, once again, people who like these types of games. However, if you're looking for the next replacement for Stardew Valley, while this game has some fun aspects, it's definitely not on the par where I would say it's enough to replace any of the aforementioned games, but we'll get to that in a bit. Next up, let's talk about the gameplay. So there's a couple of different things you're going to be doing. Just like other sort of time management games, you're going to be going through different seasons. There's the dry season, the wet season, and the dark season. There's a calendar letting you know how many days are there. There are different holidays. However, this game does something a little different, at least in the way that the game loop goes. You are doing very, very similar things to the other games, but I'm going to quickly talk about the time. Time does not go by in real time. You have a day phase, which you can do anything you want, no matter how long it takes. And then you can go back to your house and rest up for the night phase, and then only some certain things are available there. And once again, no time limit, then you can go sleep and then move on to the next day. So you can spend as much time as you want. However, you are limited by your energy, and you can replenish your energy by doing lots of sort of things. So there's a couple things to do, big majority things, which is first of all, there's farm tending. There is achievements, and then there are the dungeons, which is part of the story progression. So just to give you a basic overview for all of these points here, the farm tending, you're going to be doing things like you do in Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon. You're going to be collecting seeds, you're going to be towing them, planting them, watering them, destroying rocks and trees on your property, creating barns and other things to increase your productivity. Then you have forests where you can go scavenge every day for different plants and things to eat. There's a town where you have different shops and you can talk to the people in there. They provide different benefits as a nurse to give you stamina potions, and general store for seeds and backpack upgrades, and a bunch of other stuff like that. So one of the biggest things that make it totally different from other types of those games, and is, like I said before, the biggest draw, is the monster harvesting. In this game, there are going to be many, many different ways to create monsters. One of them is to use different sort of colored slimes to sort of infuse your seeds. So for example, if you have a red slime and you have, for example, a sort of a radish, you can put the red slime on the radish. It'll glow and grow after a couple days, or if you use special items, it'll pop up, and then you have a monster that now follows you around. Depending on the different crop that you put it on, the monster is different, and then you can have him follow you around. And then that's when you go to the dungeons for combat. You really can't go to the dungeons unless you have a monster. In the dungeons, you have certain only resources you can get in there, maybe special fish, titanium, gold, iron, and other monsters. And the whole game loop is pretty much tend to your farm, go to town, try to create monsters, and then you go into the dungeon to get as far as you can. There are different dungeons in the game. You start off with one, which is based off the dry season, and you're going to be fighting monsters that you can potentially craft yourself. And the combat is turn-based. However, it's a little lackluster. I'll get to that later, but pretty much it is you choose an attack, they choose an attack, you go back and forth. Think of a more simplistic Pokemon. That's all. That's pretty much what I can say. It's a very, very simplistic combat system, but it's there. And once a monster dies, you actually obtain hearts as a resource. So the game doesn't want you to get too attached to monsters. You go in the dungeon with your strongest ones, you go as far as you can collecting so many things, and then they die. You get some permanent experience, which you can then use on your farm to increase the level of your soil. So then the higher the level of your soil, whenever you create a monster, they start at a higher level. So you're always progressing in that way. So what are you going to be doing with everything that you obtain? Well, like I said, there are achievements. So there's a town board, and just like in Stardew Valley, it says like, oh, in every season there is this crop, this monster, this whatever, and you have to go sell one of each, and then you can get a permanent upgrade. You can maybe make a better pickaxe that uses less stamina, a watering can that has more water in it, etc. So there are long-term goals that do require you to play in all the different seasons. And even though this game is a little more lenient with the the time restriction, where you can take your time, you don't have to be like, I gotta run over here fast, I have 2 minutes to do this. No, you can take your time. You still have to kind of plan out your days, because crops will take a few days to grow, etc. So that is the game loop, and as you play and get further along in the dungeons, you're going to be unlocking more of the mystery of what is happening with the town. Why are things starting to get more hectic? And you're going to be potentially saving everybody and growing monsters. So that's the gameplay. That's pretty much it. Time for the presentation. Okay. Some things to say about this. First of all, I love the initial look of the game. The sprites are very large. I really don't mind sprite-based, like pixel-based sort of characters, and it looks way better when they're, zoomed in. It looks good. The environments are great. There's not a lot of environments, but they do look good. Like, there's reflections on the water. You can see the waves moving back and forth. Trees are glowing in the wind. Whenever you talk to somebody, they have their own sprite, which looks crazy large compared to yours, but then they also have a character portrait next to the dialogue text. And I kind of wish that maybe it looked more like Stardew Valley characters, because the portrait looks cool, but it looks nothing like the character sprite. It's very weird that way. The monsters are interesting. Some of the basic designs are whatever, but then later on you're gonna find like giant snakes, and you're gonna see some pretty interesting monsters, and that's one of the draws of continuing to play, just to see how many. But the game isn't that big. There's just a lot of stuff to do with it, so each area is packed, and yeah, it looks good. For the sounds and music, nothing stood out really in my mind. I am playing a somewhat of an earlier version. Hopefully it's updated when the game comes out, but there were some problems with the volume levels, especially during combat. Enemies would be so much more louder, like the sound effects. It's just a small thing that they need to fix. So overall, the presentation, the music and sound effects, personally for me, nothing too crazy. The overall other package looks good. However, the sprites I wish looked more like the portrait arts, and some monster designs or whatever. And the game kind of does not look good in the battle screens, and we'll get to that in a second. So moving on to all of the pros and cons. First of all, what did I like about the game? What are the general enjoyments people will like and its best selling points? Well, I do like how it's just another farming game. It's another farming simulator game where, like I said, if you've played Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon, Rune Factory, you are very familiar with the gameplay loop. The only thing, that makes it different in this is the monster harvesting. So, is monster harvesting enough of a gimmick to warrant this playthrough, the game is not that in-depth. You know, it's not that in-depth. I feel like everything that they took from the other games, it's here, it's implemented, but there's just not enough depth in it, at least what I would want. So this is definitely not a replacement for Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon, but I guess it's a nice distraction for a couple of weeks if you play for like maybe an hour or two at a time. What's the most disappointing to me, and you know, it was the gimmick, is the monster farming and fighting. Farming them is fine. Farming them is cool because you actually level them up. You can combine different ones together. You know, they get stronger and stronger. However, and then they follow you around. They look cool. You can use them around the farm, and you can you know, use them as mounts and stuff. So all the farming stuff is cool. The disappointing part is the combat, which I was the most excited for. It's very simplistic. Every monster has like two to three attacks. There's no strategy here. You know, it's always you know, you get a monster and you have them go in and die, which is totally fine if that's the way they want to play it. That's fine. So you never get attached to any of your monsters. You always want them to die so you can level up. And the game, just the battle screen just looks ugly. Like, in my opinion, it just does not look on par with what the rest of the game's, you know, vibe is going on. It just doesn't look good. But however, it could just be my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. But I just feel like I just don't want to do the combat in the game. I don't want to do the combat, but you know, just because of how it looks and how simplistic the combat is, I just don't like it. But maybe once we get like much further in the game, because right now I'm kind of in the middle of it, and things have not been changing. You know, enemies, you know, we have a basic attack which causes 0 whatever FP fight power, I suppose, and then, you know, all the different monsters have different skills. Like, oh, this one heals, this one does poison damage over time, this one lowers the damage of the enemy. It's not very strategic, and it's just, I guess you can say the problem with that is the problem with the game in general. Not that it's a bad game, but generally they have all these mechanics, but it's not as in-depth as I would want it. The farming's there, you know, the town is there, the NPCs are there, but there's not enough depth. But for a $20 game, not bad. It is not bad for a $20 game, but I just wish there was more to it. This kind of feels like early access, though it's not. At least as far as I can tell from the Steam page, it's not early access. The game was delayed a bit. The game was delayed. But I think this is just one of those slow burn games. The first like 5 hours or so, it's gonna feel very slow. But as soon as you start getting more things to do, your farm is decorated the way you want, you get a bunch of monsters, you have more inventory space, you have tons of crops, and you're juggling a lot of things, that's when these games usually pick up and become more enjoyable in the later seasons, when you start to learn everything you can do. But at the beginning, it slowly pulls you in. But once again, I just don't know. Maybe the depth will be lacking. If you go in here, once again, thinking that it's going to be some sort of replacement for those type of games, it's going to be a fun distraction. But at least from what I can see, it's not going to be on par. But I will continue playing because I am interested to seeing the different types of monsters and just, you know, seeing how crazy level you can get. Because every time, I didn't mention this, but every time you do something in the game, like fights, pick up items, you do get levels, and that's how you create new recipes. Maybe if the first couple levels you can make you know, an inventory chest, you can learn how to make a slime and all that stuff. But yeah, we'll see. So let me go to my final verdict of the game, and if I recommend it or not. And honestly, I would have to say this is a 50-50 for me. I would say definitely buy it if you just have not played a farming simulator in a long time and you are clamoring for another one of these experiences, because it does scratch that itch. But once again, if you are in the middle of those other types of really in-depth games, don't do this one just because it's not there yet. You know, you might get disappointed. But yeah, it's like yes and no. It's hard to explain, but hopefully what I've explained is enough, and what you can see from the gameplay is enough. So 50-50, not bad, but not crazy good either. So if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. It helps a lot. If you haven't already, subscribe for daily videos. If you guys are interested, all the gameplay you're seeing is taken straight from my Let's Play YouTube channel. There's a link in the description, and please come on by Twitch. I will be streaming all of this. Hopefully we can 100% it if it doesn't get too intense. So yeah, Monster Harvest, it's out. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna see you guys next time.